Hey, what is going on, guys? I'm back here for another live lesson. Hopefully you've joined back in. Sorry for a little bit of technical difficulties earlier, working with some of these new programs. Today we're going to be talking about modes and how to use them. And I also want to go ahead and thank IK Multimedia for hooking me up with the iRig stream. That's how we're bringing you this today. And I hope you guys get something out of it. If you're digging the lesson and you know what I'm playing, check out my band handle and my personal handle below. All right, I'm going to keep open for questions as we go along. So a couple of things you might want to know before we jump into this, or things you might want to check out before, is you're going to probably need to know the major scale fairly well, you know, and you're going to need to probably know your diatonic at least your diatonic triads, and if you know your diatonic seventh chords, that will help too, for sure. Let's just jump right into it. So, what is the difference between a mode and a scale, right? A scale is going to be like our home base, right? Scale is really set on the intervals. Each scale has a set of intervals. We're going to stick with the major scale, right? The major scale intervals are whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, right? And that's how we get that do, ra, mi, do, la. And that's why I don't sing. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Right, we're going to do it in the key of C. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Right? So we have a whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. And that gives us our scale. Whoop. Right? Now, the modes are based off a scale. It's really just starting the scale from each different note. It's from starting from the lowest point in each part of the scale, right? So Aeolian would be from the root. Our next mode would be starting from the next note up from the root, D. Right? And we're going to go through each one and where they fit in and how we use them, right? So the first mode we have is really just the major scale, Aeolian. Right? You want to learn the whole position, but for right now we're just going to do one octave, right? And that's going to fit over our major chords. Right? Now the next one up is going to be Dorian. Dorian is when we're going to play the major scale, but we're going to start it from the second note in the major scale. So we're in the key of C, so the Dorian mode is going to be D. So we're going to play the C major scale starting on D. D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. Right? Or so that's our next mode, Dorian. Then we have Phrygian starting from the third, right? And then again, that's going to be another minor chord. We're going to play with minor 7. We have another minor chord, or you can play it. And before we go into each individual one, because there are 7 of them, right? For each note in the scale, there's a mode, right? We're going to stick to the major scale today, as we said before. And let's get a little bit into each one. I'm not going to go too far along. We're going to really focus on a couple of the ones that we use more often. And we'll probably have to do a modes topic part 2, because this is a pretty extensive topic, and it should really be studied. Each one should be really given its own time, right? So let's just go through, keep going. We had our last one was Phrygian, right? And that's also going to be over a minor chord. Our next one is Lydian, right? And we're going to go through each one with a loop pedal, so this way you can really hear the different sounds. And then we have Mixolydian, right? And that's based off G. Right? Mixolydian, or the dominant seventh scale, right? We use that over our dominant chords all the time. Then we have, right, A minor. We're going to do Aeolian. And then the last one we have is Locrian, right? This is going to be our seventh mode of the major scale. And we use it over our half diminished chords. And anywhere you see like a minor 2-5, you're going to want to start with the Locrian mode. Let's go ahead, let's try that one. Right? Now that we've heard each one individually, let's go through some situations where you would want to figure out, oh, what mode should I be using? So the best way to know which mode you should be using is knowing some chords in harmony, right? Where the chords fall is going to tell you, oh, that's the mode I need to play. Let's take a quick example, right? We'll keep it in the key of C, right? Let's say we have a progression A minor, D minor, this will do it almost like a minor blues, F, and then E minor. I'll loop that for us. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Now, so we had A minor, D, F, and E minor. Right? And because we have our minor chord here, right, it's not going to be Dorian, because Dorian, it would need to be like a dominant chord here, the 4 chord, right? So we're really looking for where it fits the scale. So we have, and that flat 6 is going to give away Aeolian, right? Right? Now Aeolian, let's play it out of the good old E position here. Right? Let's go ahead and, so let's look at the scale. So we have A, B, C, D, E, F, right? And that F note is really what's going to make it sound like Aeolian, right? Because up until here, this could be Dorian, our previous scale, the second mode, or it could be Aeolian. This note, the flat 6, really defines Aeolian. That makes it scream, Aeolian, natural minor scale. Now, we're going to want to use Aeolian because we have that D minor chord in that progression. That D minor chord has F, and that's our 6, and it's calling out for A minor, Aeolian. So let's give it a listen. I'm going to go ahead and play it over the progression. Right, so that's going to have like a much darker sound than some of our other modes. And let's just listen to it real quick, just over a good old minor chord. I'm going to go ahead and plop a minor chord here for us. right? So that's our Aeolian mode over an A minor chord. And so always got to look at the chord progression, right? Let's listen to Dorian. Let's try to hear the difference. I'm going to do this one now. We're sort of switching keys here. Switching keys. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play A Dorian over that A minor chord so you can really hear the difference, all right? So let's try it again. Here's Dorian. Right? And now let's switch back to Aeolian. Aeolian has like a much darker tone, I hear, almost like a more sinister, really screams minor. The Dorian, I think because it has that natural sixth, right? That note in there makes it sound much, it gives it such a different flavor. A little bit more happy, a little bit more brighter sounding, I would say. Just one more time, we're going to listen to it. Right, so Dorian. Right, Aeolian. Right? Pausing that loop pedal for us there. So those are the two differences between the modes, and where the chord progressions are is really going to help determine us. Let's go back to some more chord progression based stuff here, right? We're going to change the chord progression. So what if we had a chord progression like this? This is actually a pretty common one. You'd see like A, B flat, let's try. I'm going to do a little loop on that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Because we have this half step here, really, this one's really screaming for Phrygian. Right? That's a fun progression. You can kind of go off and have fun on that one for a while. But because we had those two chords, we had the minor chord here and the major chord right a half step up, I knew, I have to use Phrygian. Because Phrygian has that half step right after the root. So I'm analyzing the chord progression and then trying to figure out what mode is going to fit best with that chord progression, right? And if you get more into jazz and some more advanced music, that's when we have to start to use the modes in a slightly different way, because we're changing keys and we're playing more with chords as opposed to really just a key, right? So that mode is really great for any time you have a minor chord with a triad a half step above it. And again, it's the third mode of the major scale, so whole, and then half, right? So that third note is going to be in between. We were doing that in the key of, that was A Phrygian, so we're in the key of F. So that's why the B flat and that's how we get those different sounds. Let's keep going. How about the next one? So the next one we have is Lydian. Lydian gives us a very interesting sound. That one sits over a major chord, right? Let's go back to the key of C. I know we kind of jumped into a different key there. Let's go back to the key of C. So that's going to fit over the fourth chord in the scale, right? It's also the fourth. That's how the mode is started too, the fourth note of the scale. So if we're in the key of C, C, D, E, F, right? That's going to be our Lydian scale, right? We'll do it down here, or we can even do it an octave higher. Right? Right? And that's going to work really well over, major triads, or the major 7 triads, major 7 chords, major 7 sharp 11 chords, right? And you're going to want to look for where it is in the progression, right? Say our progression was C. We'll do C, G, F. That's the chord you would want to use it over. You wouldn't want to play C Lydian. You would want to play F Lydian. Right? And let's take it on an even more basic level. Let's even change that progression. We're going to go C major 7 to F major 7. And on that F major 7, we're going to really lay into that B natural. That's going to give us that very interesting sound. Let's listen to the scale first, just over that chord. We're going to go, right? Right, it gives you a very different sound as opposed to the major scale, right? Here, let's try that. Let's hear the difference between the major scale and the Lydian scale real quick. Major scale in F. Right? Now let's check out Lydian. Right? It's got a much more, almost like a floating sound. I always got like a somewhat of a floating feeling from that scale. So Lydian is an awesome mode to know, and we're going to use it not as frequently, but it's one of those sounds that when you sneak it in there, it sounds really great. It sounds really, really good. Now we're going to move on to another mode that we're going to use probably a lot more often. This is called Mixolydian. If you play the blues or over any dominant 7 chords, which are in a lot of songs, right? You're going to want to know this scale forward and want to know this mode forward and backwards. Know it really, really well because it's used all the time. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to bring us back into the key of C here, right? And so that's the 5th mode of C. It fits over those 7th chords. We're going to do it in the key of C again, so it's going to be G, right? G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And we're going to listen to it over a 7th chord. Here we go. So we'll do a triad first. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we go. Right? Let's try it again over, now let's hear it over a seventh chord. This is where you're most likely going to hear it more often. We'll go. Right? Right? There we go. Stopping on my pedal there for a sec. So you're going to want to use that over the 5 chords and the dominant chords. Right? That's where that one's going to fit the best. And of course, look for it in the key. When we're using the blues scale, like we did a lesson on the blues a couple weeks back, we were using that mode and jumping in between the 7th chords, right? We had the G7, C7, right? 2, 3, 4. Right? So it's going G, switching back and forth, Mixolydian for both chords, so they're both 7th chords, right? Right, you probably don't want to play something so cheesy over it, but just for the sake of us all hearing it in our heads and everything, and really hearing the chord to scale relationship there, I figured I'd just play them real straight. All right, so let's move on to the next one. This is Aeolian, right? We talked about this one for a little bit in the beginning. This is the natural minor scale, right? And again, we talked about which where you would want to see them in the chord progression. So let's go through the 6th one, right? And this one, again, fits over the minor chord. Right, we talked about this one a little bit earlier. This one's going to be used pretty often. This is what also known as the natural minor scale. So it's also could be thought of like the relative minor to the key, right? If we're in the key of C major, you got to think, 1, 7, 6. There's relative minor. 1, 7, 6. Right? So let's go ahead and check this one out. Let's lay down that minor chord again. Whoa, get the other one going. Gotta delete it first. 2, 3, 4. Right? Right, and that's our natural minor scale. It's going to be the darker sounding of the scales for sure. And again, you want to look for that. You want to look for the 4 chord, the chord that's a 4th away, to be minor. Right? If we see a progression that's A minor, D minor, we'll probably want to use A Aeolian. That's what's going to fit it best, because it has that flat 6. All right, and let's move on to the last one. We have Locrian, right? Locrian is going to be over, if you're thinking of triads, it's going to be the diminished triad that it fits over because it has a flat 5. So let's listen to it. We got, and you have a diminished triad in there. right? So we actually have a B diminished triad in there because of the flat 5. 1, flat third, flat 5. And let's hear the scale one more time. Now you're not going to hear too many tunes that are starting off right on a diminished chord or right on a half diminished chord, right? So we're really using that mode. We're using it and then kind of getting in and out of it, right? That's not one where you're very rarely going to hear a song that's like, oh, just play everything, G low key and you're good. That's a very rare occasion, if ever, right? It's really just used for when we see certain chords. We want to be able to jump to it. So let's use it again in the key of C. Well, I'm going to do what's called a minor 2-5-1. This is where you're probably going to see it much more often. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, we'll do it a little bit slower now, just so you guys can really hear what's going on. 2, 3, 4. Nope, gotta delete this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's give it a listen. One more time. Right? So that's one we're really going to use more situationally. It's not really going to be one that we're going to stick to for a long time because there's just not a lot of songs that are sitting on those chords for a super long time. Right? So those are the 7 basic modes of the major scale and how we can figure out which one to use as we look through the chord progressions. That's really the key, is being able to look and analyze chord progressions and go, that's the one chord. I need to use that mode for that chord. That's the 6th chord. I should use Aeolian. That's the 6th mode. That's the 2nd mode. I should use Dorian. Right? That's the biggest thing, if you're going to take away anything from this, is to really focus on that. Knowing your harmony is going to make playing and using modes really easy. It's going to make you see them like, this makes sense, other than just patterns on your neck. Right? And now, why should we learn the modes themselves and not just think of them in a key? Right? The biggest thing is once we get out of the realm of like playing songs that are, standard pop progressions that are all in one key, like we can even take a common pop tune, what's the one I use? 8 Days a Week, right? It's like an old Beatles song. The first couple chords, they kind of break the key. It's D, E, G, D. Now, those chords don't really fit in one key. Now, if you're thinking, that could be 4 and 5, yeah, you could play A major over that whole thing, but when you got to this G, A major's not going to work anymore. Back to D. So we really want to learn these modes, so when we hear progressions like that, right, you really want to get these modes down, so when you run into a progression like that, you can know when to change and what to go to, right? In this case, right, I would probably play this almost like Lydian, right? Probably play, right? And then when they got to G, I would probably play, you can either play dominant or probably just G major. So it's almost like we're really going from Lydian, Mixolydian, Lydian, or actually major scale. And then you can stick to the major scale on that one too. So that's why we kind of want to learn these modes individually. So this way, when we come to these progressions, right, we're not stuck if we get a chord that's out of the regular 7 chords of the major scale, right? Or let's try another one, for example, right? Let's try, we got like, almost like a Santana thing. Santana loves Dorian, right? A lot of his tunes are Dorian. So what if we had like a... Right? So you could play that whole first part as Dorian. It's going to fit really well. When we got to this minor 2-5, you would want to go to that Locrian, and then some kind of altered lick here. Back to 2-5, 2. So let's check that out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Whoop. Always got to delete these things first. This is a looper. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm switching. Back to Dorian. All right, guys, so that was our lesson on the modes and how to use them. Remember, the biggest thing that you can learn first is your diatonic 7th chords in the major scale. Know that really well because that is what this is all based out of. Thank you again, IK Multimedia, for having me here and for hooking me up with the iRig stream. That's how we're broadcasting all this to you today. If you enjoyed the lessons, go ahead and check out some of my stuff I got going on my handles below. And I'll see you next week, guys. Take care.